Hey guys. So I realized that first and foremost, I have a very difficult time breaking down my thing into distinct moves. Maybe that's a problem. But I have a better time writing very lengthy things and then piecing them together in the correct order. So what I did instead of PowerPoint or making them into moves to make it shorter was I kind of took my big sections and made them into kind of abstracts of themselves, which I think tending to like summarize those things tends to make it come out as moves. So hopefully, I'm just going to read it. It won't be as long, I promise, but I am going to read it as if I was just going through it. So here goes. So first is the introduction. Oh, and I should be sending this also to Dr. Rango so that you can follow along or read it if that's better for you. Okay, so there's this kind of topic proof of relevance section, which is mainly getting into telling you what the movie's about so that you have some sort of concept about why this is or how this is applicable. So in this essay, I will address a question of digital temporality and race within the structures of capitalist repetition compulsion through Don Coscarelli's Bubba Hotep. The story revolves around an aging, impotent Elvis impersonator named Sebastian Haff, who now lives in a suburban southern nursing home alongside the aging mental and physical capacities of himself and his peers. Haff is convinced he is the real Elvis, who switched place with an impersonator after growing tired of the artifice that comes with fame and fortune. When an old Egyptian pharaoh begins sucking the life out of the frail, easily accessible, elderly targets without drawing suspicion, Haff and his partner Jack, an old black man who believes he is JFK but was dyed black to hide the truth, take it upon themselves to defeat the monster from the past. So my main research question, or because I always have multiple and then I end up hopefully putting them all together, what political possibilities are available in close examination of subjective vantage points when capitalists' history is one of repetition compulsion? What role do subjects play in temporal repetition, and what are their individual compulsions within the heroic narrative? Where are different subjects' desires for compulsion most activated? What are differences and possibilities for breakage? So 2, question of temporality. This is kind of the larger historical situation being applied to the movie. So I'm not doing the textual analysis since I'm part, but it will be interwoven with the chosen theorists to kind of suss out how it's applicable. So here is my summary of that. Using examples from the movie here, I have shown that the present is always held captive to managing the spontaneous... let me tell you the key people I'm using for this so that you understand. Balcom, but I'm going to come back to that in the last part of this. Keeling, and then my additional texts are Marx and Jameson. Jameson mainly is going to come into play more in the next section. So here I go. I've shown that the present is always held captive to managing the spontaneous eruptions of past within a haunted contemporary cultural sphere. The plot unfolds based on the conceptions of a future that is always in peril from its past, and yet always heroically resolved before the newest eruption. Therefore, the future always appears in flux, as if it were a space of open potential where the socius isn't foreclosed, or else the current work to understand the designated evils evolving, means and motives wouldn't be rational. Yet the impending peril keeps the present stuck in the same activity with new tools in different aesthetically coded surroundings. We conceptualize this type of future as a necessary and always present battlefield, as if its utopian promise may radically change for the worst if the peril is not continually stifled until it can be ultimately defeated. At the same time, that conceptualization ensures the moment any future arrives that the present must be utilized to stave off the haunting additional perils of the next future without actually dealing with the past that drive each newest image. As the quality of each new encounter appears increasingly perilous, as additional details move into the visual field, subjects experience the appearance of linear progression without its affective or relational actuality. The future is always already secure, demonstrated by the problem's tense and dramatic resolution in the present before a new appearance is represented in alternative ways each time. Here's the Balcom part. In this section, know that the other big part will be on the middle passage and the historical trauma that is being racially replayed. It accounts for the violence in the present, then retroactive rationalization of Black people as this martyr within the heroic narrative, the sacrifice that sadly must be made for the larger function. The utopian future that never comes is vital to this movie. It did not fit easily in explaining a summary of the moves because it's not really making a move. It's saying everything that we've said and then using the portions of the movie to prove it. It's more textual analysis. So it's basically proving the movie demonstrates an expression of this trauma through textual analysis, and it's going to be located somewhere in the middle of that. Because the next section is where proving that is then making a move, if that makes sense, where it's vital then. Okay. So 3, subjects and temporality. My key text is this How Black Folk Became Fetish Objects or chapter essay inside of the bigger book that is Everything But the Burden, What White People Are Taking from Black Culture, where Greg Tate is the editor. I'm finding that some of those chapters may also be useful to help suss out this like more individual micro-based section, but we'll see. So my additional texts are going to be Marks and Jameson, and you'll see how those two come into play really well here, especially in, to me, like these are the big move-making people. The How Black Folk Became Fetish Objects are going to be more in the textual analysis section again. So this movie then demonstrates 2 interlocking ideas about race and capital. In addition to the haunted temporality brought on by capitalist repetition compulsion, the movie also brings forth a specific framing of the contemporary subject who, within contemporary regimes of finance capital, is positioned as a sort of counterfeit of multiple interactive pasts. I didn't come up with that myself. Dr. Rango helped me, just to give credit. And then I'm going to move through some Marx here, because obviously this is the biggest section in which I can even approach Marx through the counterfeit of a counterfeit. So I'm going to try to work through that. Wish me luck. Subjects are likewise susceptible to the same historical hauntings as individual repetition compulsions, expressed here through race relations who have different needs and desires within the unfolding structure of repetitions and compulsions that create the linear heroic narrative. In addition to the haunting of history, we must also examine each of the vantage points over the course of the heroic narrative to find where their roles in repeating the trauma are most probable and assured, and where their potential to take actions that go against the appearance of progression within the heroic narrative logically or ideologically, get loose. I find compulsions are, through textual analysis I found, and so I'm just giving you the move here, I find compulsions are most strong when the present is framed in a way that appears to demand immediate performance. In other words, personal anxieties. Looser areas for exploration of self and others are when the present is no longer framed in a way that the looming threat is immediate. The key here is to tie in personal compulsions through perceived threat with historical ones in the current temporal structure. What I essentially find here is that if we reach the high point of battle individually, where instinct and reaction must kick in, this is the moment in which it is always already too late. Whatever compulsions appear to logically follow for that person will kick in depending on the appearance of the situation. It is because the appearance itself is what is produced. If we want to change the compulsions, we must find a way to intervene in the downtimes, a way to preemptively influence the representation of situations that appear to demand action. In other words, we must find a way to reverse the perception of active and passive moments. It is the passive moments that should instead be seen as critical for battle. What is genuinely different about our situation from the middle passage through reading this text, then, is obviously a question that has to be addressed. The most important change is that the successful Black man who can make it into view within the heroic narrative appears to be the one doing the self-sacrifice to perform the violence on himself at this moment. It now looks consensual, and the historical reasons for that are tied to the perceived partnership and the idea that we're all in this together for a collective utopian future. In other words, right, Black people were brought into the capitalist dream, allowed to assimilate, and that is a capitalist-defined version of progress. And I probably will have to, right here, hit on the JFK and the moment that allows Black people to also be assimilated into this version of the utopian dream. I don't talk about that here, but now you know. If we receive an image of a collective future that is promised for all, despite violence to Black people in every historical repetition, it also appears as if any divisiveness originates in Black people who won't perform, who won't willingly sacrifice themselves to the monster for peace. In other words, the African-originated monster, the pharaoh, who dons Western-style garb, and also, I didn't put this here, but he also wears a pimp hat, right? So that's another different historical moment. And it's constantly doing that in aesthetics, but you don't get to see that because I'm not doing the textual analysis here. But it's really, really good at that, right? In other words, the African-originated monster who dons Western-style garb are non-performing black people. The monster continually interrupts the heroes from peace, yet also provides the necessary context in which they can ascend from passive, unimpressive lives of Southern counterfeit white men to appear heroic at all. It provides the background for which there can be good or heroic black people on their side to counter the idea that they might be the villains. It does two functions, right? The split in perception of performing black people and non-performing black people is absolutely key to the current expression of capitalism. When appearances are more literal and bare, i.e. slave ship, physical force is necessary for the capitalist dream. When the partnership ensues, it's to create the appearance of evil so the necessary violence can appear consensual and self-inflicted when it's not, right? Here's where I leave off, everything starts getting blurry. In this 4 conclusion, obviously I have to finish getting through the last section, which is the big working it out. Hopefully you can also see that some conclusions are starting to come into view, so I will rehash those here. But I can't write a conclusion until I know what all things do, conclusions come into view, and until I finish getting through what needs to get done. So questions that have popped up that either remain or won't be addressed. Is slow breakage in each of these vantage points enough to eventually constitute a historical break with the collective compulsion of capitalism? Is there a problem of reproduction and re-entry into a historical perpetuum that offers no consistent or substantial mode of unlearning that needs to be addressed here? Can compulsion resistance reverberate in the same way? So obviously the one question there that may be just completely out of what I can address here is the reproduction question, but it is something that I think comes up through this, especially when addressing any socius. So it may be just out of my range for the work that I can even do, but I like to keep them there in case it does become relevant in what I work through. Oh no, I'm at 12 minutes. I think we had 10. If we have 15, yay. Sorry if not. Goodbye.